Well, hello there. This is Craig Hane or Dr. Dell, and this is going to be about part 4 of my book, Public School Math is Destroying the USA, How and Why, and What to Do About It, how you can avoid it. And there's 5 parts to this book, and I've got a video on each of the 5 parts because I think an author needs to tell people a little bit about the book if they want to know how it come about, maybe before they read it or maybe after they read it. And so in order to do that, I'm going to share the screen with you and tell you a little bit about this book. And by the way, you can get a free PDF copy of it, as you're going to find out here very shortly, or you can buy it on Amazon for less than $5 if you want a physical copy of it. Amazon's wonderful. Now, this is my personal website. I would have you go to craighane.com. My name, CRAIGHANE.com. And I've got my story there, my VTA's there. I've got a video library of free videos on all kinds of math subjects that you might find interesting. They're just of general interest. It's not training. And then there's all sorts of things here. If you know a young adult that wants to improve their life, click on that tab and join the Triad Math Tribe. It's phenomenal. They'll love it. But for the purpose of this part, you're going to click on the free ebook tab. And when you do, you'll go to a web page that has lots of free ebooks on it that I've written, but the one that you're going to click on is Public School Math Destroying the USA. And you click on that, and bingo, here's the book in PDF format. Now, in this video rather, I'm going to be talking to you about really, in a sense, the second most important part of the book. If you want to know why, now part 1 and part 2 and part 3, I talk about really how this all came about. People want to know, well, how did this all come about? Now, part 4 is where I really tell you what is wrong with public school math today. Part 4, 4 chapters, 19, 20, 21, and 22 are all you need to read to know what's wrong with public school math. Chapter 19 is, just going to expand my picture a little bit here, is the classroom's unsolvable problem for both the teacher and the student. Now, this is a really important chapter, and I learned this way back the year after I graduated from college. For 6 years prior to my graduating from college, 2 years in high school and 1 year and 4 years at Oberlin, I tutored math. And I used something called spike pedagogy, and I never had a failure as a tutor. Every student I tutored succeeded if they would work, and most of them would. They wanted to learn math, and as long as they didn't get frustrated by it and afraid of it, they could learn math. Virtually anybody can learn math. I'm going to say 9 out of 10 people can learn math if it's taught properly. Then I taught high school the year after I graduated from Oberlin, and I tell about that up in part 3, and that's when I learned the problem with teaching in a classroom. And there wasn't anything I could do about it. There's nothing any teacher can do about it. And I explained that in chapter 19. So this is why math in schools was taught in a classroom on a schedule with all the students trying to go at the same time. This is why most students don't do well, can't do well. It's an unsolvable problem, really. It's solvable today, by the way. I'll tell you about it in part 5, but it's a total transformation of how it's done. Now, chapter 20 is what should be in the content of math, and what happens in most standard high school math curriculum today that the schools are using is they put in a lot of theory that shouldn't be there because nobody cares about it. Nobody will ever use it. But the mathematicians over the 20th century got a lot of it injected into high school math education because to mathematicians, they think it's interesting. And I talk about that, and I give you examples of it. And if you know math, you'll really understand and appreciate it. If you don't know math, you'll kind of read the chapter and sort of get an idea, and it'll probably bring up a few bad memories of your own situation. Chapter 21 is all about math tools. Now, this is where things have just gotten truly amazing. All the old manual tools that our ancestors developed, which were wonderful tools to do math, are difficult to learn, difficult to master, and so on. And modern tools now have come about to make it much easier. And I talk about that in chapter 21. It all started, the first modern tool that made math really much easier was the calculators. And now today, in the 21st century, there's a tool that came out in 2009 that transforms the way you teach math for people that are going into science and engineering. It's a tool called Wolfram Alpha, and I talk about that. And it's not being taught today in our public school curriculum. And I do teach it in the program I'm going to tell you about in part 5. So part 5 is where you're going to really learn about how math should be taught and can be. It is being taught today online for students. Now in chapter 22, I talk about what I call the horrible bell curve, and I won't try to get into it now, but you want to read that chapter because, quite frankly, that is probably the major reason public school math is terrible. And I explain that. Now, I have known that really all my life. I was a victim of it in a sense when I was in high school. But as a teacher, it was really a horrible thing when I was a math teacher. And I ended up, after I got my PhD in math, I went to Indiana State University. Now, this is chapter 23 I talk about, which was a teacher's college in Indiana. They taught all the high school math teachers in Indiana, most of them. Indiana State Teachers College, what it was originally called, and then they changed it to Indiana State University. And I went into the math ed department, and I got to explain to them why the horrible bell curve was horrible and why it was bad. And they got so mad at me that they fired me. So I got fired as my first professor job. Then I went ahead and went to an engineering school in the same city, Terre Haute, Indiana, and taught math there. And it went fine and dandy. I was a math professor for 7 years after I got my PhD. I got my PhD in 1966. Then I decided to apply math, and I went into business applications, and I've applied math now to all sorts of businesses. And I tell that in chapter 24, tell some of it, not the whole thing, but a lot of it. So part 4 is the first 4 chapters, 19 through 22, are really what's wrong with high school math as taught in public schools. I call it the standard math curriculum. And they all pretty much have to do it today. And then chapter 23 and 24 are just beyond that. And now I'm getting ready for part 5, which is the 21st century solution. And I'll talk about that in the next video. So this is Craig Hane. If you're at all interested in math education, you need to get yourself a copy of this book or my free PDF copy. And at the very least, part 5, which I'll talk about in another video. And this is the way any student today can be taught math the right way. And 90% of all students will do well at math, will exceed at math, they'll like math, they won't be afraid of it. And you'll learn about that in part 5. So that's the one unavoidable part of the book that you must read if you don't read any of the rest of it. Okay? Craig Hane, see you on another video. Have a great life. Bye-bye.